This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
Hey, Joe Walsh, White Flag, former Congressman Joe Walsh, White Flag. Do me a favor. I'm so not very good about promoting what I do, but go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. It doesn't cost a thing, but it'll help. White Flag with Joe Walsh. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Listen to the podcast everywhere that you listen to podcasts, and tell your friends about it. I'm excited for this because we haven't done this yet. I have a co-host today. And my co-host is my business associate, Dr. Kurt Jetta. Dr. Jetta is the founder of a consumer analytics company, Tabs Analytics. He's got a PhD in economics from Fordham University. I got to know Kurt when we worked together on something called the Center Street PAC, the last election cycle, trying to defeat some of the extremists and get some reasonable Republicans and Democrats elected. Importantly, 2 years ago, Kurt sold his company and went into the affordable housing business where he's working on some really cool, interesting projects. Before we get into the topic of our two-host conversation today, Kurt, I want you to tell me about something that you introduced me to 3 or 4 days ago. We were talking about guys our age, and I was looking for something healthy to eat, and I love ice cream. You told me about this company that you've invested in, a healthy alternative to ice cream that actually really tastes good. And I tried it, got it at Giant Food here in DC. It's fantastic. Sweet pea, non-dairy ice cream. Tell me about it.
So yeah, sweet pea is a chickpea-based non-dairy ice cream. You say chickpea.
Don't let that scare you.
Right. So most of the non-dairy ice creams out there are either soy-based or oat, and so they have this kind of bad aftertaste.
They don't taste good.
And this has the taste and texture of ice cream. I tried it. I knew some people on the board. They were looking for investment, and it's been a pretty good run since then.
Hey, Kurt, I'm holding up Vanilla Bean.
As you should be, yes. So right now we're just regionally distributed. We're in Giant Foods in DC, and then we're also in Giant, which is a different Giant division of Giant in Philly and Central PA. So yeah, try it out if you're in those areas.
Hey, by the way, Kurt, I'll add this. When you first told me about it, and you said chickpeas, I started to get a little wiggy because I've tried some soy-based and oat-based stuff, and I didn't like the taste. This tastes like ice cream. It really does.
Yeah, right. The one thing people will say, the texture for sure, it's nice and creamy.
Yeah.
If you don't like the cloying sweetness of ice cream, this is also good, but it tastes great. And, it's, I think everybody that I've tested it on or shown it to had tasted 100% saying it's very good. Now, I'm not a big ice cream lover myself. I'm not hardcore like you.
Oh, man.
But I could still see that, if I'm an ice cream lover, this is something that would, I could get behind.
And we'll close, but it's healthy. It's again, non-dairy. So for folks out there who are lactose intolerant, vegans.
And yes.
Great stuff. I'm neither one of those. I'm just a 60-year-old guy who fucking loves ice cream, and I'm looking for a healthy ice cream to eat. This is it. Sweet pea. Again, Kurt, DC and like the East Coast up Philly, you can get it at Giant Food stores. You can get it in New York City.
Balducci's and Keep Foods.
San Francisco out at Nugget.
Yes.
But then generally, last question, Kurt, generally, if they've got a website, I'm sure, where else is there anywhere else people can get it if they really want to?
Yeah, can order it online. It's sweetpeawow.com.
Cool.
Sweetpea Wow.
Sweetpeawow.com. You will love it. Trust me. I asked Kurt to come on today, or rather, Kurt demanded he come on today. Because
Well,
I've been Johnny One Note. I'm convinced Trump's going to be the nominee. Boom, boom, boom. It's all done. Kurt, you wanted to kind of really drill down and really take a look at handicapping this Republican field.
right. And it is accepting the premise that we can debate this later, but accepting the premise that Trump, because of all the legal jeopardy he's in, he doesn't make it through the primaries. So we're talking about the rest of the field, DeSantis, Pence, Haley, and all the rest.
Okay. So that's the assumption of this exercise, that Trump
Correct.
gets out. Now,
Yeah.
I need my audience to know, and for the record, I want to be on record in that I don't think he's going to, but I think this is an important exercise to play because he damn well could.
Right. And we can debate that, time permitting, at the end. But the way I was thinking about this is, you're the political guy, you have the background, you've run, obviously. I'm the analytics guy, so I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at all the polling data, and I'm thinking maybe we can kind of blend those two disciplines together and kind of see where things really stand. And I did want to ask you, if you'll indulge me.
Yes,
here.
yes.
So you ran for president against Trump.
Yeah.
Kind of as a protest candidate, I guess.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, important perspective on also understanding the strength of the individual candidates. Just maybe tell us, what was it like? Because I don't think I've ever even asked you, what was it like being out there running for president?
Actually, that's really a funny question, Kurt, and that's a great question, and not a lot of people have asked me that question. It's real, and I've ran for Congress a couple times. I won, I lost. This is a whole different ballgame, though. Running for president, even though I wasn't Ron DeSantis or Mike Pence, and I was a little choo-choo train, you give up your life. I was also, Kurt, blown away by the spotlight that's put on you, no matter who you are. Like, we got a lot of candidates in the field right now. Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, I think, Francis Suarez down your way, the mayor of Miami. Doesn't matter what level you are. Once you announce, there is this huge, intense spotlight that's put on you, and it can be blinding. And along with that come just, threats and everything else like I've never seen. It's really tough, no matter who you are.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that spotlight's going to be important. Who can stand the spotlight?
Who can stay in this?
On the campaign. Yeah. So let me start with Nikki Haley. Handicap her prospects. Trump's not in the race. Everybody else is. What do you think about her prospects?
See, this is why this is so good, because you and me, my friend, our brains think differently. You are the data, you are the analytics guy. I'm just kind of the pie in the sky gut guy. If you told me that Trump got out tomorrow, I'm putting the lion's share of my money on, say, a DeSantis. There's then another tier of, I would say, Pence, Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott, who would have a shot, but I think a real minimal shot. I think Nikki Haley would have a real minimal shot, very minimal, just like I think Tim Scott and Pence would. What do you think?
So there's three numbers I look at most of all. I look at the very favorable, the very unfavorable, and the overall name ID awareness. So I don't care too much if somebody's somewhat favorable, somewhat unfavorable, just because those people are movable. The people on the extremes are not. So when I look at Nikki Haley, she's been in the public eye for a while. She still has quite a number of people that don't know her yet. Yeah. So that kind of tells me something. So there's still 30 to 40% of Republicans that don't know who Nikki Haley is. And then when I look at, where are her very favorables, she doesn't have that real strong animated base. So I just don't look at her as, having any of that kind of that core strength. And then one other thing, if you're not a very well-known woman, I have seen in the data and the research I've done that there's always a 2 to 3 point disadvantage. There's just a certain minority of voters that will ding any female candidate.
Really?
And you see it on all the metrics of, decisiveness and integrity. It's just, and you can kind of see it in some of those interviews when they talk about the voters. There's always that segment.
That's interesting.
Of voters.
And that's
Yeah.
unique to a woman who's not well known.
Correct. Yep.
I would imagine, Kurt, her unfavorables are probably not super duper high.
No. I mean, she's fairly, so she hasn't really alienated a lot of people. It's just, she's kind of in that mushy middle.
See,
and when you're there, that's problematic.
So see, I balance your data analytics like that. You're looking at favorables and unfavorables and things like that. I don't even look at that. I look, Kurt, like from a different level where I think generally there's only one lane in this Republican Party. We'll call it the Trumpy lane. And right now in that lane, you've got Trump and DeSantis and maybe, what's his name? Vivek Ramaswamy. They're in that hardcore bully, Trumpy kind of lane. If you take Trump out, Kurt, and by the way, I think only that lane can win the nomination. So if I'm Nikki Haley or Pence or somebody, I got to figure out how to get in that lane because the base wants a bully. They want a jerk.
Although, I would challenge that a bit. And I know that's kind of the conventional wisdom on that lane. And I understand the framework, but I also see that, that people, there's not a strong antagonism for her or anybody else in that not Trump lane. So as long as you don't have a lot of people that just hate you and you'll never move, I see that you're still in the game.
So she would be in the game because she's not hated. I think that's accurate.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So let's go to Vivek Ramaswamy, who you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I look at him as kind of the Pete Buttigieg of this field. Kind of nobody knew him, and then he's coming out of the woodwork and now has made a fairly substantial impact on the race.
I think, Kurt, with Trump not in the race, I'm very bullish on Vivek. I don't think he could ever get the nomination, but if Trump were gone tomorrow, I think within a few days you'd see Vivek's poll numbers climb because, again, I think he's tuned himself to where the base primary voter is.
Except,
what?
Now, here's the problem. People still don't know him. Still, half the Republican voters do not know him. But
isn't that good?
That said, his favorable, unfavorable, again, strongly, very good. So he has really, I mean, if he could just get that name ID up, he would be a force.
So is that
because he really has made that impact with the base.
Answer me something, Dr. Jetta. And by the way, everybody listening to me and Kurt Jetta, you need to follow Kurt Jetta on Twitter at Kurt Jetta. You say he's
with a K-U-R-T.
With a K-U-R-T-J-E-T-T-A. Kurt Jetta. Follow him on Twitter. You mentioned he's not well known, Kurt. Isn't that kind of that's good for him? That's like an opportunity, right?
I would say, I mean, it's getting name ID is the easy part. Then kind of shaping what people think about you and their perceptions is the hard part. So, he's kind of gotten ahead of himself a little bit. I come from the consumer world where you want to establish the foundation, make sure people know you, awareness, favorability, trial. And the trial in this case is actually voting.
So I think if Trump is gone, I think Vivek has a very high ceiling. I think he would immediately climb up, but I don't think he'd ever get the nomination. Continue.
Yep. Okay, so third is Ron DeSantis. I know you have very strong opinions about that.
I can't stand him, by the way. You know that. I can't stand him. I think he's a jerk. I know him. I think he's everything that's wrong with the Republican Party. But if Trump's gone, he picks up. And by the way, Kurt, I want to ask you a question. I think DeSantis picks up the lion's share immediately of Trump's support. I think he's the clear favorite, but I also think he's a flawed candidate. He's weird around people, and I think he'd fall. Kurt, before you get into DeSantis, let me ask you this. Trump's gone tomorrow. what percentage of his following would just say, fuck it, I'm not supporting anybody, I'm done? Like,
That's a big number. That's, I would say, at least 20%
of
not
his support.
Yeah, yeah. So you see that in a lot of the data where they're kind of their profile as far as, their how strongly they feel about voting or how they feel about other candidates. So there's a big divide. They love Trump. Everybody else is average. They don't know him, whatever. So there is a very sizable portion of that. And I think that's what the party's so afraid of, is that.
Yeah, so I think, Kurt, under your premise with Trump gone, I think DeSantis immediately becomes the overwhelming leader and the overwhelming favorite. But the reason, Kurt, this field is getting so big, I do not believe it's because these candidates believe Trump is vulnerable. I believe it's because they believe DeSantis is a weak number two. So I think DeSantis immediately would climb to the top, and then everybody else would go after him, and I think he's
I disagree with you, sir.
Fire away.
Okay, so again, this is a framework from the consumer products field. So people tend to think of kind of a one-to-one, your main competitor out there, Coke, Pepsi. The way consumers and voters behave is much more complex. And I actually saw a lot of that when people dropped out of the field in 2016 with Trump.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, Trump picked up the hill. There were people that switched between Kasich and Trump.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of that kind of, it will be a scatter shot of those voters kind of going to different candidates. One thing about DeSantis, kind of a data-based analysis, is his decline in the polls was very predictable. And the reason being is, if you recall, during when we were at Center Street, we were polling DeSantis regularly.
Yeah.
And his, what we call that top box, that very favorable, was never very strong except in Florida. They loved him in Florida. Nowhere else did they know him that well. They knew him, just they kind of were squishy. So that type of, support becomes very soft. So he still has not, and that, people also think that Trump is hurting him, not with the voters. He's still very low, very unfavorables with the Republicans. So it's not that.
Kurt, why hasn't DeSantis budged and gotten any bump? And really, in the 3 or 4 or 5 months he's been out there, he's kind of gone down a little bit. Why hasn't he gone up?
Well, I mean, you can only vote for one. And I would argue that it is people moving and strengthening for Trump rather than, moving away from DeSantis. There's nothing that I've seen in the favorability data that is all that much different than what we were looking at in 2022. So he has a decent amount of high favorables, not where he needs to be. He hasn't really pissed off any voters, to a great degree. I think that's against the conventional wisdom. But he's just, Trump, his top box and his extremes are just so off the charts.
Yeah.
Nobody really can. There's really no framework to even evaluate.
So then, Kurt, to end on DeSantis, if Trump's out tomorrow, you have no doubt that he would be the front runner.
I do doubt it.
You do?
And I think he could, bounce to the front.
Okay.
But I think that would be a highly volatile and dynamic field.
Interesting. Cool.
Okay, so 4, Tim Scott.
I put him, my gut, Kurt, tells me I put him kind of in the Nikki Haley category. I'm going to guess that he's generally well thought of in the Republican Party. His favorables are probably pretty good, I'm going to guess. I think I think with Trump out, I think he'd bump up. I still don't believe he can ever be the nominee this year. But I think he sees some real room then to maneuver.
Yeah, so here's where this is my guy. Here's where I'm placing him. So very favorable, 25%. Very unfavorable, 3%. So he
people
still
don't
has
know
a lot
him,
of
though.
people
People
that
don't
don't
know
know
him.
Yeah. So he still has, but again, what I was saying about Vivek is Tim Scott additional. And so that's where kind of he is the person why I say it doesn't really apply that the Trumpy lane.
Yeah.
The Trumpy loves him. Everybody loves him that knows him. So he has a very high conversion between awareness and favorability. I see him shooting up and gaining more than Trump, or than, I'm sorry, DeSantis.
You really do?
And you look at even the odds markets, he has a slight advantage versus the others, not a lot. If you go on predictit.com, he's kind of, 7 cents to the dollar, whereas everybody else is 5. But
I
those
think
numbers I saw were just strong.
Kurt, you and all your data and all your expertise, I don't mean that disparagingly, I think is overlooking, my gut, which is the Republican voters want a prick, a jerk, to be their nominee. And Tim Scott will never be that. You don't buy that?
I think there's definitely that element of it. But right now, there's no evidence that they don't think they like him as a conservative.
Okay.
But I think he probably gets points for not being a jerk. I mean, at least the numbers I'm looking at, these favorability numbers, I mean, even the Democrats don't hate him. I mean, so when he gets into a general, I mean, those are some formidable numbers that I see.
Kurt, he's a 58-year-old single man. I'm just saying we've never had that. I think people want their president to be married.
And Pete Buttigieg is, I guess he's married. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So you're bullish on Scott.
Very bullish.
Cool. More so, by the way, Kurt, more so than Nikki Haley.
More so than Nikki Haley. Far more. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to your main man, Chris Christie.
All right, I'll be brief, Kurt. And I don't know your numbers. He has 0 shot. With Trump out of the picture, he won't move an inch. And I read somewhere, Kurt, that of every Republican in the field, he is the most despised Republican by the base. They hate him.
That is correct, sir. You're absolutely correct. So, yeah. So just among Trump voters, I mean, this is just like, why are you bothering? You had to have seen this. So 5% of Trump voters are very favorable to Christie.
Okay.
28% very unfavorable, and only 15% don't know him. So, it is just, these are abysmal numbers. He has no shot. He could potentially do a little damage in New Hampshire, but I don't know where he sees, any kind of opportunity.
But what's interesting, Kurt? His whole thing is, I got 0 shot, but I'm going to get on a debate stage and pound Trump. With Trump out of the race, then maybe he's hurt by that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. See, that's why I let you be on this show.
For the record, I'm not the expert. Okay, but
no,
you and I
that's
agree.
An excellent point. Right, his reason for being
his reason for living is gone. So, but you think with Trump out, he's not seeing a bump?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay, let's do the last one we'll look at on an individual basis, because then we're going to look at kind of field and then dark horses. Mike Pence.
I'll tell you what, Kurt, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I go back and forth on Pence. Most of me says, and I'm assuming again Trump's out, but most of me says because of what he did on January 6th, the base will never embrace him. He's despised by too many Republicans. But then I think with Trump out of the picture and DeSantis sucks, Pence weirdly could kind of fit a role where he brings the different factions together. I'm a little more bullish on Pence.
I'm bullish on him only because I think the punditry is saying, oh, they hate him. Yeah. They'll never accept him. That's not borne out by the data. There is a segment 14% that are very unfavorable. Another 20% or so are unfavorable. So you can't have those kind of numbers and have, legitimate
Does everybody
shot.
know him? I mean, I'm assuming every
Well,
Republican
yeah,
knows
everybody knows it, and that's really the bigger issue. Is only 15% are top box,
Okay.
very favorable. Now he has been on the stage for 8
Yeah.
years, and that's all he's gotten.
Yeah.
That's pathetic. So
Yeah.
no shot at all. No matter Trump in, Trump out, he's gone. Okay, so let's do kind of speak to whichever one you feel comfortable with, or
Okay.
if you haven't. So kind of the other people that have declared that are noteworthy: Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas. I don't know the Burgum first name.
No,
North
Doug.
Dakota, Doug Burgum, Francis Suarez, or Will Hurd. Would you care to comment on any of those four?
The only one I'd comment on is if with Trump out of the picture, you should look into this Doug Burgum guy. He's a really successful businessman, launched a number of companies. He's uber wealthy. He's generally kind of a free market economic guy. With Trump out, and by the way, he's spending a shitload of money right now. He's spending more money in Iowa right now than anybody. I think with Trump out of the picture, I actually think he's going to rise because he's got the money to do it. The only other one I'd comment on, Kurt, is Asa Hutchinson. I think with Trump out, even though he's anti-Trump, he's not like Christie. I think Asa will see a bump, but he'll never get the nomination.
Yeah, I don't see any of them having the name ID. Even a Will Hurd. I just saw some data on Suarez, who's actually been kind of teasing this presidential run for a long, long time. He's at like 30% awareness, so he's got no shot. There's none of them that I don't see any scenario where they make a dent in any state anyway. But even Burgum, that's going to spend all that money. He gets a name or ID, but then what's his position? What does he even stand for?
So, Kurt Jetta, to me, the most interesting question is this, and we haven't talked about it yet. With Trump out of the race, that's our assumption, and I don't agree with the assumption, but that's our assumption. I think, Kurt, that opens the field up to 2 to 3 names we haven't mentioned yet. I think that's the wild card.
Would you care to give me a wild card name?
I will give you. I think.
Give it to me.
I think with Trump gone, I think you see Glenn Youngkin get in. I think you see Brian Kemp in Georgia get in, and he could be like the superstar. And I think you see maybe Rick Scott, your senator down in Florida, get in.
Yeah. Or what? Well, I'll just note on Youngkin, his actually in the polling markets or the betting markets, he was actually equal to Nikki Haley and Mike Pence as far as kind of the odds getting, which I found really unusual. Could I interest you in a Donald Trump Jr. play?
Oh, fuck.
If Trump.
Seriously? Well, that's interesting.
Isn't that the way authoritarians do?
Yeah.
They want to keep it in the family. And that would be a graceful way for Trump to exit. I think that is what people say is a non-zero probability type of event.
Well, to that point, Kurt, I could easily see if Trump got out, I could easily see a super duper duper Trumpy, even a Tucker Carlson, a Steve Bannon, a Donald Trump Jr., somebody is going to get in. I could see that happening. And the other thing, Kurt, here is if Trump's out, that means what? He's decided he can't run. He's in jail. He's convicted. He's whatever. Right. Remember, he's never embracing anybody that we've talked about. He will never embrace the nominee. And a certain percentage of his voters ain't never voting Republican.
Right. And so that's why I think don't sleep on that possibility.
It makes sense. I think don't sleep on that possibility. We'll call it the Donald Trump Jr. possibility. And don't sleep.
Prince Donald. Yeah.
Don't. Right. It makes sense. And don't sleep on the possibility of another big name getting in because Again, you and I agree that
Yeah.
neither one of us thinks DeSantis. Trump gets out, DeSantis is going to be the front runner for a little bit. I don't think he can hold it. And otherwise, Kurt, it's not a super strong field.
Right. Right. Yeah. I would just argue Scott is strong, and
You think
look
so?
at the Republican history. I mean, Ben Carson in 2016 was at the top of the polls for a while.
Yeah.
Herman Cain back in, what was it, 2012?
Yeah.
Again, so, black candidates in the Republican Party poll strong, and he's a likable guy, nothing controversial about him.
Okay.
So
Can I ask both you and me the toughest question? And maybe you don't like to have to make a call right now.
yep.
But if Trump's out tomorrow, give me one name. If you want me to go first, I will. Who will be
Go
the
ahead.
nominee?
Go ahead. Yep.
I'm going to say if Trump's out, the nominee is going to be Brian Kemp.
Whew. Whew.
Yeah.
Brother. Wow.
Who would you say? Give me one name. Miss.
I'm going with Tim Scott.
Well, to me, that's a wow. I mean, that's
Yeah. I mean, he's in it already. Kemp would have to just
Kemp would
ramp
have to
up
get
and-
in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Kurt, does the field shrink over time? It's got to, right?
well, yeah. I mean, I think there's going to be the shakeout of people not able to
Money.
raise money. But yeah, Kemp, though, I think that he's more of a candidate of the punditocracy than he is of all voters. I haven't seen data on it recently, but outside of Georgia, I just don't think he pulls much name ID at all.
He probably doesn't pull a huge name ID. He's one of, and I'll ask you this question. He's one Republican who pulls from both MAGA and what we'd call normal Republicans.
Now we're talking Tim Scott already?
I'm talking Brian Kemp.
So you just described both.
No, I agree
Both
with
of
you.
those candidates.
I'll
yes.
give you that.
So,
Tim Scott does that.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there anybody else who does that? Not Pence, right?
No.
He's done.
Kind of, but he doesn't pull strong numbers for MAGA. No.
Nikki
Haley
Haley?
doesn't. Not strong either side, really. Yeah. So.
And does
Yeah,
DeSantis not pull strong enough from normal?
No, right now the data suggests that's where he is pulling. But, it's kind of this weird acceptable not Trump thing. I just see that, he, as we've been saying, his support is soft, and it could be a very dynamic race if Trump's not in the race.
So let me ask you a question. You are the expert, but I go on TV a lot. And whenever I go on TV, my mantra is, because everybody wants to ask me on CNN and MSNBC, who's the leader of this lane and that lane? How many lanes are there? And my answer is always, there's only one fucking lane in this Republican Party. It's the Trumpy lane, the authoritarian lane.
Right.
Do you right now, do you see it? Are there more viable lanes in this party for this nomination?
No, I just say, no, you have to, though, the Trumpy lane has to be acceptable to the not Trump lane. And so right now, that's probably a lot of the problem with the way they're positioning is I'm either in the Trumpy lane or I'm kind of not the Trumpy lane. And, then that's always just comes off looking very awkward, a la, Nikki Haley. So
do you agree that whoever the nominee is with Trump out has to be able to tap into most of that MAGA?
And I think they will to the primary. It's just the general election that's going to be problematic. And again, back to the data, the only one that I see Haley would pull pretty well from independents, not all that hated with the Democrats. So there's almost no crossover Republican Democrat. It's all up to the independents in general elections now. They hold the keys. The least engaged voter are the most important voters. And Scott does it in spades.
All right. For the record, Kurt is very bullish on Tim Scott. I want to ask you two other questions. One is, let's go talk general election to me. Do the Republicans have a better chance of winning the general with Trump as their nominee or somebody not named Trump?
Somebody not named Trump. There's just Trump will never convert people. He'll get turnout, and that could be the issue. The only way that he wins is just a massive turnout disparity. He's not going to get new voters in. It's just, will Biden voters turn out? And you saw, a couple races. Warnock, for example, in Georgia almost lost because there was such a disparity in turnout.
Yeah.
You saw Tim Ryan in Ohio lost because of in large part because of a turnout disparity. So that can't be underestimated. But as far as preference goes, independents skew strongly Democrat in general, and for Biden versus Trump, they'll pull heavily.
So react to my contrarian view on that question. I think Republicans have a better chance of winning the general with Trump as their nominee because I think it's already too late. They have a Trump problem. If Trump's not the nominee, 20 to 30% of the Republican vote will not vote for the Republican nominee and may not just vote. And then, so I think Republicans are fucked.
I wouldn't fall on my sword with my point of view because I think that's valid. And you're kind of talking kind of the same issue is turnout. It is like, will people stay home? And the only thing about Trump being on the ballot is that is a much higher likelihood that the Democratic turnout will be
that's interesting.
Strong as well.
I think they're stuck with him because I think it's too late to get off of him because he's going to take his marbles and go home, and they can't win without those marbles. So go back to the top, and this was a fun handicapping with Trump out. But what does my data analytics expert say about that question? Do you really believe he'd get out?
And this isn't more analytics. This is just kind of a thought exercise on, can you navigate 4 different major legal cases? I mean, it's just, and eventually between, now more critical candidates chipping away and all the time distractions and then people saying like, do I want this chaos and circus? I think just eventually it would be very easy for him to come up with a good excuse not to stay in.
I don't think he ever
saying that he's a quitter.
I don't think he ever gets out. Kurt, though, as a data guy, if you were advising any of these other candidates right now, should they be critical of him or not?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, that's the only way. Although, I guess
careful.
It's on the assumption if they're playing the game that they don't think he's going to stay in, which that has to be the reason why so many people are getting in, isn't it? I mean, they can all see numbers and how extraordinarily popular he is with the Republicans. So why would you get in other than you're basing that assumption on he's not going to stay in?
They get in because they're hoping and praying the justice system or a heart attack takes him out.
Yeah.
And they believe DeSantis is weak, so they could be the alternative. But you asked me, why do you run for president? Everybody runs. I think a lot of this, Kurt, too, is they're all positioning themselves for post-24.
Yeah, that or something in the cabinet or VP, right. So
last question, Kurt, if Trump stayed in, does he win the nomination? Is that a foregone conclusion?
Yeah, I think that's a foregone conclusion, yeah. I don't think there's a whole lot of debate on that. It's just the debate is, does he stay in?
This was cool.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Again, everybody, Kurt Jetta, my business associate and just a brilliant data analytics guy. Please follow him on Twitter at Kurt Jetta. That's with a K, K-U-R-T, Jetta. Great follow. He puts out great stuff.
If I could just do another shameless plug, Joe, before we
do.
So JettaInvestmentCo.com is my company website. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the affordable housing, but it talks about a new housing concept really new, old is new again, for low income people. So read up on that.
That's JettaInvestmentCo.com. That's great stuff. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Joe.
I found it. Look, I love ice cream, but I'm not 18 years old anymore, so I can't eat a lot of it. But I found it. I found a healthy ice cream alternative that actually tastes great. Sweet pea non-dairy ice cream. Get this. It's made with chickpeas. I know. It tastes great. Tastes and feels like real ice cream. Look, I screwed around with soy-based and oat-based products. They all tasted like shit. Sweet pea made from chickpeas is the first healthy alternative I've found that I absolutely love. I'm in DC. I get sweet pea at Giant Foods. If you're in DC, Philly, Pennsylvania, go to Giant Food stores. If you're in New York City, go to Balducci or Key Foods. In San Francisco, go to Nugget. You will absolutely love this. It tastes great. Made with chickpeas. That's so cool. It tastes great.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.